Hello and welcome, my name is Parky and this is going to be a brand new series of Spore creations. The whole point of this series is basically going to be to take your suggestions from the comments section of the previous video and create some epic creatures, buildings or vehicles even in Spore. As this is the first episode, I'm just going to use a random example of the sort of things that you could ask me to do. And that is going to be a Bulbasaur, because I'm a great fan of Pokemon, and I thought that it might be one that looked moderately doable in the game. And notice that I use the word moderately several times, mostly because I don't claim to be any sort of pro at building in Spore, so we're going to just see how derpy this turns out. Okay, so first of all, Bulbasaur sort of has like quite a small body. He's like a plump little green pig, right, on the ground. So, here we go. We're just going to bring him down to ground level. Maybe make him sort of... He's a bit wider at the back, so I suppose we can make him a little bit more like this. He's going to have like a bit of a sort of generic round body shape, but that's okay. It's looking fine. It's going to look actually a lot better if we just put this straight into green, because, to be honest, I'm going to find it's a bit hard to imagine if he's sort of a... He's sort of like a blue colour, actually, isn't he? Like that sort of blue. Okay, well, that's fine. I can follow this a bit more clearly in my head now. I'm not actually using a guide for this either, it's worth noting, so please bear with me. Okay, so we're going to need like 4 little squat legs, kind of like this, and we can change this around a little bit, so don't worry. Okay, so what I'm thinking is we need to simplify these legs a little bit, so let's just remove one of the joints. We're going to have them a little bit like this on the back and front. So if we just grab these legs again and we just stretch them out so I can actually see what I'm doing, and then we can get rid of this like so, then sort of bring it back in a little bit. It's going to take a little while to get these legs right. The legs I always find in Spore are like the most difficult part to get sorted out. Maybe if we just move this up a little bit so we can see what's going on. He's sort of currently in a bit of a squatting position, which is fairly accurate, I would say, to what he looks like in real life. So I think we just need to make these really short. If we can make these any shorter, that would be great. I think that's pretty much as far in towards the body we can make these legs go. So if we now just make the joint a little bit bigger at the back, it'll look like it sort of merges into him a bit better. Because he's got quite chunky legs at the back, old Bulbasaur. He's been doing leg day at the gym. So let's now do the front, which is going to be fairly similar, but they're slightly longer at the front, and they sort of move towards the ground a little bit more like this. Okay, fantastic. We'll make it a bit chunkier as well. It's a stout little fellow, Bulbasaur. Okay, so that's great. Now, in terms of the feet, really he's just sort of got like little claws at the end, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to replicate that. I believe it's like 3 claws, so maybe we can use these. Oh dear God. Okay, might want to move this whole creature right down towards the ground then if it's going to do that. Okay, so let's make these a lot smaller, maybe make them come in a little bit. He's going to, you know, he's got big nails. It's going to be a bit more of a realistic creation of Bulbasaur, I think. In real life, you'd have horrific looking feet like this. I think at some point what I might do is install a mod which allows us to have a bit more variety in terms of the parts that we've got in here. I think that might be quite cool. So I think that's pretty much going to do it for the legs. It's looking a bit weird at this point in time, I will admit. It's going to look better. So now in terms of the head is an interesting one. There's several ways that I could go about doing this. Maybe the first would be just to use a big mouth. A mouth would enable me to sort of like make a whole head in one go if we do this correctly. So if we just put this down, for example, and then try and move it around a little bit like this. Now you see what I'm saying about the head being a whole mouth. So I think we're going to need to make this sort of merge in slightly. If we bring it forwards, make it a bit taller, like that. Now again, I will admit it looks weird. Wait until we put the bulb on the back. I'm not sure what we're going to make the bulb out of, but we're going to figure it out. So I think next up we need some eyes, or even maybe something just to make his head look a bit more bulky on the top. There might actually be a different mouth that's more suited towards this, but I thought this one looked sort of fairly accurate, because Bulbasaur has quite a large mouth if he was in real life. It sort of stretches from one side of his face to the other. Alternatively, what we could try and do is just add another bit of this here, like so. Make this a bit bigger. See, the problem with this is, basically, there's no easy way of adding a head when you're using such a small creature like this. So really, we haven't got that much choice in the matter. So yeah, I think overall we are going to stick with the mouth plan that I had before. So let's just go along with this. I think this mouth's a little bit better. It looks a bit more in proportion. Now, his head actually does take up quite a large amount of his body space, so I think something like this would be good. Okay, so let's now find some eyes like I said before, and he actually has sort of like red eyes with a white pupil. So maybe something like this, which looks really terrifying. But you know what? Bulbasaur is quite a terrifying being, and I suppose that's probably going to be as good as it's going to get. He's got quite big eyes again, so maybe we'll make them a bit bigger. If I saw this in real life, this is kind of terrifying. Okay, so let's now go for maybe a couple of ears. Now, one way that we could actually attempt to do his ears is to use arms, which sounds a bit weird. Or alternatively, we could try and make them with some of these preset parts. But I think it's all going to look a little bit weird, if I'm honest. So I'm thinking we go with the weird idea of using arms. And you'll see what I mean. So we're going to attach the arms down here, going to get rid of these hands, and also drag away one of these limbs. We're now going to move this up, and hopefully if we can taper these down a little bit, and maybe make it a bit shorter, something like this. Okay, I don't know whether this is actually looking good or not. I think it's okay. Because he doesn't sort of have normal ears, they're just sort of like little blobs, aren't they, on his head? I think that's fine. We're going to go with this. And then next up, I think we need to find our bulb. Now, thinking about this, there's actually quite a few nice parts we could do for this. We could use like one of these spitting ducks, make it really big. I'm not sure if we can make it zoom in anymore, because it's going to stick out of his back a little bit. Alternatively, we could use one of these, which actually looks fantastic, doesn't it? I think maybe we go for this. It's a shame because you can't extend them anymore. In fact, I wonder if we could use this one. Oh, this is almost perfect, isn't it? I'm wondering if there's any parts in the additional bits here, like the jelly button. That might look good. Or even this thing. I wonder how good this would look. There's so many choices for Bulbasaur. I didn't actually plan this at all. I'm just entirely surprised that there's this many options. Okay, let's have a little look. Can we make this any bigger? Maybe something like this. Oh, it's sort of like sticking off his back a little bit. Maybe instead then what we could do is just use our original thing. Or we could merge a couple together. So if we made this one really big, a bit wider, maybe a little bit less wide than that actually. That's looking a bit odd now. Oh, you know what? No, we're going to stick with the original option. I think that actually looked pretty damn good, this one here. So we're going to go for this, and we're just going to make it a bit bigger, something like this. Because it sticks above his head slightly. I think that's good. It's as close as you're bloody going to get in Spore anyway, let's be honest. So then he has a little tail, which is just like literally a little nubbin again. So maybe if we use another arm. Weirdly enough, this will behave like a normal arm in Spore, which is a bit disconcerting. But we're going to ignore that fact, and we're going to merge these together. If we can, come on, there's a sweet spot somewhere there, and maybe rotate it up like this, make it a bit thinner like that. Oh yeah, look at this, it's going well. I suppose his tail isn't actually that big, but that's fine. Look at that, perfect. So next up, what do we need? We need like little nose holes. So I think the perfect thing for this would be one of these, or a couple of these actually. We're just going to make it really tiny, and we're going to make them really small, a little bit like this. Yeah, there we go, that's pretty much as close as we're going to get it. Now aside from that, what else does Bulbasaur have? He sort of has like lots of little markings around his person. Like little plates that are darker than the blue skin that he has, like little dark blue plates. So I think the best way we're going to be able to do this is using these. So I think he has one set on his front legs like this, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe if we make these a little bit smaller. There we go. And then he has some on his back legs, I think, at the front, a little bit like this. If we rotate these around just to make the pattern look a little bit different. So there we go, like that. And then he has some sort of randomly dotted around himself. And I think we'll move that a little bit further into here, like that. Perfect. And then where else does he have them? He has some on his face as well, I believe. So we're going to put one down sort of in the middle here like this. And we're going to make this a bit smaller and rotate it around. Just so it's like that. Perfect. And then we're going to grab a couple more, maybe going somewhere like this. I don't know how accurate this is actually, I'm not really sure. But you know what, it looks fine. I kind of like how that looks. That seems good. And then does he have any on his stomach? I don't think so. Okay, so here we go. It's looking pretty damn good so far. I'm kind of impressed by myself. And actually this leads on to something else. If like it doesn't... Is it Vileplume or something? Has the big flowers? We could do things like this. Oh, well, we're not going to do that right now. But either way, it's looking pretty damn fantastic. He's got a very scary mouth, though. Now unfortunately Spore, one of the perks, or one of the cons I suppose you could say with it, is that in the creature stage, the creature creator, you can't specifically paint individual parts of the creature's body. You can only use these predefined sort of base coats and other things. So we can't specifically paint his eyes red, for example, which is a bit of a problem. But strangely enough, in the vehicle and the building creator, you can actually paint individual parts of the building, so I'm not really sure why they didn't ever add that in. God damn it, Maxis, what are you doing? Okay, well let's now move on to the colouring scheme, as best that we can do it, that is. Okay, so Bulbasaur is a shade of blue, sort of a bluey green, maybe something a little bit like this. So that's going to be the base. I think for the coat, so this is this like details, I suppose? So if we go for a green, but we want a sort of very dark green, it's almost more a blue again. So if we go for like a really dark blue like this, and then go for, I suppose that's fairly close. Unfortunately, again, the details on the sort of kneecaps I put on here aren't going to match the same colour, because obviously in real life these would actually be a dark green. Maybe there's a mod out there that I can look for as well, which will do that. Maybe instead we can kind of replicate it doing something like this. I'm not really sure, that doesn't really match, does it? Meh, that's pretty close. I'm going to stick with something like that, at least it gives it a bit more detail. And then the detail is going to be the colour. Now what is this going to change? Is this going to change the big bulb at the back? Or is this his eyes? I can't really tell. What did that even change? So it got grey as well? I think it's just changing his feet, isn't it? Feet colour? Oh no. Okay, well as much detail as we can go, we're going to go with a sort of deep green like this. And that's pretty much as close as we're going to get it, to be honest. So, Bulbasaur. Okay, so there we go, Bulbasaur. He is so much scarier than the actual Pokemon. Okay, and that is fairly accurate, but to be honest, like, this is more scary than I was imagining. Okay, so that's good. Let's give him a little test run, see how he walks around. This is how Bulbasaur in Spore walks around. Okay, so he does a little sort of, like, really fast pat. That is really terrifying, but you know what, it's fine. He loves life. Look at his face, he's so amused. So there's our first creature ever created in this series. Oh my god, what's inside his mouth? That's terrifying. Well, as I said, if you want to see your creations being built on this series, then all you have to do is leave a comment below in this video. Next time I will randomly select one to build, and hopefully we'll have a successful time as we did with Bulbasaur here. If you enjoyed the idea of this series as a whole and want to leave your support, then please do leave a rating, it really helps the channel out, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, awkward, goodbye. Awkward.